Hi.
Hi. I've always had family that could financially help me out of a bind. And the reason I have that privilege is because they gave up a lot. So my parents came from China, basically built a life from scratch here. Like I grew up really, really frugal, and they worked really hard. They're like I would say, an American success story.
Do you think there's some sort of guilt that comes with having parents that sacrifice a lot for you? Because I think one thing that people struggle with is that, oh, I have something that I really want to do, but my parents, expect me to do this, and it would be disrespectful to them to throw away the education they've provided me with.
I think that guilt is very, very real. I feel that guilt all the time. And I think one of the reasons that I haven't gone into debt is because I feel so much guilt about it that I can't fathom the idea of going into debt and asking them to take me out of it. When I was in college, I worked between 3 to 4 part-time jobs the entire time I was there. When I left college, the first few months, I continued working 4 part-time jobs. And I did like nothing. I never left the house. When I was growing up, my parents were just not that social with me. Like my dad was definitely, I work and I'm always stressed out because I'm the one providing for this family in this completely new environment.
Yeah.
We didn't really connect at all until much later.
You don't even go out of your way to just talk for the sake of talking, right?
Right, and we actually fought a lot. There's this like push and pull of like being formal and then being way too informal. Like the things that, like, for example, my mom felt entitled to know about my life, and entitled to do. Like she had no problem, like coming into the bathroom while I was taking a shower, and talking to me while I was in the shower, and like commenting on my body. And when we've gone back to China, that's actually really, really normal. And yes, it's like traumatizing, but at the same time, it's so normalized in that culture. It's hard to talk about it in that perspective as necessarily like just trauma. It's hard being a parent with your kid because you just want like everything to be okay. If you're a good parent. There's some shit parents.
I mean, a lot of
there,
parents just force their kids to do stuff to make themselves feel good. You know what I mean?
Yeah, or to make themselves feel safe. Everyone lives a lot of their life out of insecurity. They just try to fix that insecurity or overcome it in very different ways.
Right.
Everybody, to some extent, is self-serving and self-preserving. And I think it's not necessarily even Asian parents, I think
Just parents in general.
just parents in general.
Because you want to emotionally justify the sacrifices you've made to have your kids.
I don't think it's everyone. I think there are truly like selfless parents out there, but I think people in general don't realize the responsibility of having a kid. We don't know what we're going to be given as parents, and people don't think about that. And I just realized that I am in 2-hour parking and I don't know how long we've been here.
So were your parents happy about you wanting to be a full-time musician? Nervous laughter.
Well, so my mom is a pianist and
Oh,
she's a
okay.
piano teacher. I think she discouraged me from making this my life because she knew how hard it is.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is like, it is a hard life to be a musician. And when you're an immigrant coming to a new country, making incredible sacrifices, like, I don't know the last time my mom saw her siblings.
But do you think that now makes you owe them because they have to do all these things? Yeah, my parents sacrificed a lot, but was a lot of it overkill, Was a lot of it really stuff that I would have wanted them to do if I had, given the choice of like how I was brought up,
It's such a tough question because I don't know how I would have the life that I have if they didn't.
Without all of it, yeah.
And I think it's a very complex question of what do kids owe their parents. I would say it is a very American thing to believe that you don't owe your parents anything. I think it's a very Asian belief to think that you owe your parents everything. And I think both are extremes. And I think it also comes down to what do you mean by like what do you owe your parents?
So if your parents said no, you're gonna be a full-time psychologist, you know, or psychiatrist, or if they said no, you can't be a musician or teach music, right? You're just gonna go work in therapy full-time, right? And they basically didn't give you the option. Like, what would you have done?
Probably defied them. One of the things about my relationship with my parents is they realized that like my force of will was so strong that there was nothing they were going to be able to do about it.
Right.
Especially when they, after college, when I could actually financially support myself and didn't necessarily need them in the same way, I think they realized that they can't hold on. Like they either can have a relationship with me and be supportive, or they can try to hold things over me and have nothing.
They're given an ultimatum, basically.
Right. And while I don't think that I owe them a career like of their choice, I think I owe them and owe myself like whatever I choose to do to work really, really, really hard at it.
But then doesn't that put a lot of pressure on you? Because it's basically like you never let yourself be mediocre at something. But for example, like a lot of musicians, a lot of them go negative, right? So that's where I think a lot of people are very scared. It's like, oh, I defied my parents to do this, and I end up being just like another, you know, average person who hasn't made it yet. That's a hard thing to do.
And I think that's something that I differ from like probably the Asian expectation is like success is typically in money, in fortune, in fame, but I don't think that that's what success is. Like, I don't agree with a lot of the things that my parents did and the way that they approached things. I think to some degree to a lot of degree, they probably don't agree with a lot of what they did either. But I think there's value in trying to understand people. Even if your agenda is to change their minds or to go against what they're doing, it's easier to do that if you can understand.
If you understand, yeah, I've heard the only way to change someone's mind and to make someone do something is to make them want to do it. And there are no exceptions to that.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of Asian families and immigrant families will use negative reinforcement as a form of shaping how their kid makes decisions. But really, what that does is it affects your self-assuredness and self-esteem.
A lot of our parents and a lot of, not even Asian parents, but older generations come from much more survivalist background. Like they probably come from places where like you could live or die by what you do with your career. We must be compassionate to people, and we also cannot ever fundamentally comprehend what it's like to be another person.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing that a lot of people say now in our generation. Oh, we're finally the woke generation. We saw how poorly our parents raised us. We're gonna do it the right way. But it's the same story every time,
it's
right?
Always the same story.
We're gonna be thinking we know what we're doing and we really don't, right?
Yeah, and it's inevitable. We're always growing up under different circumstances. I mean, my brother and I are 6.5 years apart, and our childhoods are completely different and completely opposite in a lot of ways. And that's within a 6.5 year span. And that's with the same parents. We're gonna make a lot of the same mistakes. And I think the foolishness is in thinking that we're somehow gonna be immune to the mistakes of our parents. In any way to like have the like audacity to believe that we are somehow smarter or better than. The second we stop having that humility is when we're probably the most likely to make those mistakes.